Hi, good evening everybody. We have had showers across Texas this afternoon. Kind of a rainy mid-August day here, and yeah, this shows the updraft towers, and you can see some of the flanking line structure right there, and down on the lower right is the rain shaft. Alright, so let's see what's causing all this. We'll go right down to the maps. Got GR level 2 up, and this shows us that the activity is not very organized, and it's not at all severe either. And most of what we see on the radar here, this is all downdrafts. Most of this activity is in the decaying stage, and you have to go all the way out into central Texas to pick up the more active components. And possibly if we go to the upper tilts, we can see this a little bit better. See, we go up to the 2.4 degree tilt, and this reveals the area of stronger updrafts there. So that kind of overshoots a lot of the outflow dominant activity elsewhere around Texas. All right, heading into the rest of the charts, I guess we'll start with SPC. And it's Arizona that's of interest. And they've got the monsoon pattern and some outflow dominant storms in that area. And in that region, outflow dominant means gusty and dusty conditions. Also on the East Coast from North Carolina up to Virginia, a marginal risk area. No watches in effect. Well, actually, we do have a severe thunderstorm watch for Arizona of all places, and let's see what they've got on that one. Looking for storm clusters from the Mogollon Rim, moving out towards the Phoenix area this evening, and you can see they're emphasizing the strong wind gusts, and that's pretty much it for that. Why don't we go right down to the satellite and look at those storms there in Arizona. Get this centered here. Okay, typically when we get into July and August, the monsoon pattern starts well to the south, down in southern Arizona. Eventually it works its way up through the higher terrain into northern Arizona and into eastern Nevada as we get into August. So this is a fairly seasonal pattern, and what we typically see, if I run this back, you can see how a lot of the cells develop along the Mogollon Rim. And that's an area of very high terrain extending from about Flagstaff south to, I guess it would be just north of Globe. And this is a very common area for thunderstorms to initiate. And when we have this flow out of the northeast, or if we have light and variable flow, that can carry a lot of the storms out into the Phoenix area. Also, you can see some cells out over the higher terrain of the Great Basin area, up there around Elko, Tonopah, and southern Utah. And this is also what we tend to see in August. And let's run this forward and see the animation. And there we go. There's those cells pushing out towards the Phoenix area, so I guess they're going to be getting it here very shortly. And looking at those tops on those cells, they do definitely look very active. See, especially right in here. Now, let me see if I can bring up the cities. They've got a pretty nice overlay here at College DuPage, and we can bring up the interstates. and the highways, and that should get us in the ballpark. Okay, so Phoenix right there. Yeah, this is out around the Chandler area. Yeah, Chandler's right around there, and there's the overshoots. That's probably the strongest activity in the Phoenix area, so it looks like that is propagating out there towards the city. Elsewhere around the U.S., well, it is pretty active in the southern U.S., and you can see all the cells there in Texas, and they have had a break in the southeastern U.S. due to some of the dry air infiltrating southeastward. Further out in the Carolinas, you can see those heavier storms right there, all the way up towards the Norfolk area, and in between, a large area of dust. We've been, not dust, but smoke. We've been seeing this for several days now, and that, of course, is from those wildfires out to the west. And speaking about dust, why don't we take a quick look at that, see if that dust has made it in. And we're going to go to, was it Worldview? Surprised I don't have this bookmarked. I might as well do that here. All right. I'll bookmark that so we don't have to go through that next time. And let's bring this into the Gulf. We'll add the aerosol optical depth. And where we have the higher amounts, that tends to reveal where the dust is. So yeah, there it is. It's making its way into Texas. Now, I would expect probably in the next couple of days we should see things get really kind of, when we do the drone footage, we should see things a little bit more cloudy and hazy looking tomorrow. Now, the aerosol optical depth does not penetrate the cloud material like what you see right there, but very likely some of that is starting to come into the southeast Texas area now. So we're finally getting it, and let's see, looks pretty quiet out there in the Atlantic. And we have to go all the way to the Western Africa coast to find the next big easterly wave. And let's check out NHC, see if there's anything coming down the conveyor belt, and looks like it is not. So very quiet for this time of year. Typically we're seeing hurricane season ramping up about this time, and things are just quiet out there. And I remember a couple months ago we were looking at sea surface temperatures below normal out there in the Atlantic, so it'll probably be about time to look at that and see what's going on sometime this week. Well, not much change with the upper level jet pattern, and that's still up there in Canada. A couple of segments grazing the northwest and the northeast. And there's that Tut trough right there, stretching across Texas, and we've got that subtropical ridge starting to build a little further east into the northern plains. And then just taking a quick look at the moisture. Looks very similar to yesterday. We've got light southerly flow through the southern plains, and dew points in the upper 50s to lower 60s for the most part. Going to our thickness chart, this is where we do see some major changes, and this has been kind of a very slow progression. It's typical for August. Things are pretty slow moving. It's not like January and February where, you know, you've got a front making it across the U.S. in 2 days. This is going to be kind of a slow, drawn-out process, and what we're talking about is this gradient here, this thermal gradient. This is a new frontal system trying to come together in the west and up north. Looks like it has made some progress into the Great Basin area. There's the leading edge of that front, and part of it extends up into Ontario and Manitoba as a warm front. Now, we have been watching some of the moisture down in Texas and Oklahoma gradually working its way northward, so we're going to see rain chances going up for the northern plains. So pretty much like what we've been talking about over the past couple of days. And just to emphasize the change that we're seeing, the 540 decameter thickness line is it's covering quite a bit of area. And this is where we typically see the rain-snow transition. So the atmosphere in this area here should be cold enough for snow. So we're starting to see that appear there. It's probably about another 2 months before we get into the bulk of, before we actually see cold season arrive. So I don't know. We'll see how things progress over the next several weeks. This is definitely kind of a cold pattern, and I really hope it sticks with us. We could certainly use the mild weather. Our electrical bill was up over $500 last month, so we don't really need any more of that. There's that deep southerly flow across the Great Plains, so now we are advecting that moisture north through Kansas and Oklahoma. So that'll bring in proximity to that front there in the northern plains. So this is where we're going to see things coming together. And let's look at the rest of the satellite. This is where we've had that cold front coming through the northwest. So we know it's somewhere in that area right there. Back behind it, this is cooler, drier air. But it looks like some of that smoke has been kind of recirculated back across Washington. That's very thick there. And looks like a couple new fires with that very strong wind flow picking up near that frontal system. So there we can see some strong southwesterly winds picking up that smoke in that, I guess that would be the Bitterroot Range there. All right, let's see what else. Let's get a couple more sectors here. We'll look at Texas. Looks like a pretty good surge of, I'm not sure if that's a sea breeze or an outflow boundary, but it's very definitely able to pick that out there. And we've also got a couple sectors for the southeast U.S. So we got some strong organized storms there, and there we can see that these storms are fairly well sheared. Anvils are moving at a pretty good clip to the northeast there. And these are going to be, for the most part, multi-cells and some of the stronger cells right here north of Myrtle Beach. A couple of cells in central Georgia also. I guess that'd be around the Macon area. So I don't know if anybody's out there actually trying to chase these, but I would expect maybe a few photogenic opportunities. Like I'd probably want to be right in that area right there. You'd be looking out to the northwest, and you'd see the towers towards the setting sun. Pretty nice setup there. And then I've got the northeast U.S., and flow is also kind of fast in that area. Looks like 50 to 70 knots. Got that upper level low up there in the Ohio region, and then we've got that segment of the jet kind of flowing around the south side. So that's helping to ventilate those storms and giving us a few line multi-cells through Pennsylvania out around Scranton and a few other cells out around New Jersey there. Okay, let's work out the forecast for Texas here. Going to be seeing more cells developing overnight, and what I've mentioned about, you probably remember I've talked about during the nighttime when we have southwesterly flow, those storms do tend to be diurnal. These are actually continuing through much of the night. This is 5, 6 a.m. So what's happening here? They're definitely southwesterly flow storms. What's helping is the upper level low that's out around the panhandles, that right there. So that's an area of instability sitting out in that area. Also around the periphery of that, we've got kind of a weak jet. So that's helping to organize those storms. So a couple factors helping to keep the overnight convection going in Texas. So we would expect to see storms anywhere from about Austin up to Dallas-Fort Worth overnight. And then it looks like a lot of that lifts up into the Red River tomorrow morning. Elsewhere around the U.S., let's see what happens. Look at the NAM model here. Looks like some organized storms in the DFW area once again for tomorrow night. But with the moisture field lifting north, I would expect to see certainly storms breaking out there in Kansas. And let's see what happens for Tuesday. That's when things really come together in the northern plains. Okay, so this is about Tuesday night right there. Looks like maybe Iowa. A good focus there, and maybe some overnight convection MCS down there in Oklahoma for Wednesday morning. And then let's look more at the long range, and I'm going to bring up the precipitable water there. Let's get that centered. Okay, moisture definitely heading north. 2-inch precipitable water amounts coming up into Kansas. And monsoon continuing to be in effect in the southwestern half of Arizona there. All right, so getting into Wednesday, looks like our frontal system is about positioned like that right there. So we definitely got surface boundaries, the moisture coming north, and upper level support. So that's going to probably point to this area right here as being favored for organized storms. And then a lot of that will lift up into the eastern Great Lakes for Friday. More moisture in Texas, and let's see what the next big change is. Looks like a lot of that moisture kind of positions itself in the central U.S., so rain chances will be going up in that area. But here's the next frontal system coming out of Canada. It's being driven by this 10-18 millibar high in Alberta. This is about a week from now. So once again, it looks like more moisture will be coming into contact with that frontal system. So another shot of storms in the northern plains. For Monday and Tuesday, 20th and 21st, every time I see that date, that reminds me of the eclipse last year. It's hard to believe a year has passed since all that fun there. So for Monday the 20th, pretty well organized system developing there in the Minnesota region, driven by a 1024 millibar high. That's kind of strong for this time of year, and you can see the extensive coverage of that high covering the entire western U.S. So this will definitely have a big effect about a week to a week and a half from now. Looks like the front will make it maybe into the DFW area, maybe not much further south than that. There's the high, there's the front, so not going very far south. It's just kind of a little backdoor front sitting in that area. And then we redeveloped a southerly flow once again, and I see more polar air poised up in western Canada. So let's see what happens with that next outbreak. This one gets delayed by cyclogenesis in the high plains right there. So it looks like the cold air just kind of gets locked up right there in Alberta and Saskatchewan for the 26th. We're getting way out to the end of this run. And it looks like we pretty much lose it. It looks like most of it goes east. So, yeah, that third outbreak is probably going to stay up to the north in Canada and the northern tier states. But you can see that high precipitable water there. Looks like continued mostly cloudy weather with scattered to broken storms from Texas all the way up to the central plains throughout the end of this month. So I guess if there's any consolation, it's that we're not going to be looking at a drought in Texas, at least, or most of the south central U.S. And other than that, I think we're just going to be looking at that next cold front. Let's see when that gets down here. Yeah, we're looking at about a week from now. So until then, we're going to be under southerly flow. And it's probably going to be kind of I would say it's going to be kind of stagnant in this part of the U.S. up till a week from now. But up to the north, you'll definitely have some weather to look at. Okay, let me see what's going on in chat there. Fun with Tech, Carl Berghoff, Brett Dean. Adiabatic lift, that's probably more than I can go into detail here. I would certainly put that in Google. But you're just looking at a constant decrease in temperature with a parcel that you're lifting. And in terms of forecasting, we compare that to the environment around the parcel. If the environment around the parcel is cooler, that means that that parcel is going to continue to rise. I got David Lumbert there in Muggy, Arkansas. Michael Burrell, glad to catch the webcast. Christian Flock, Yukon, Oklahoma. Got storms up there too. Erica in Coffeyville, 85 degrees, over 72. Carl Berghoff, record heat there in Wisconsin. 3 degrees shy of a new record for August 12th. Was 90 degrees today. In fact, why don't we go and put up the high temperatures? I'm not going to have the high temperatures for today, but we can see how things are tracking yesterday. We'll go to Colorado State's DIFAX map archive and bring up that high temperature. And yeah, probably a good idea I looked at this because, man, that's some brutal heat up there in northwestern North Dakota. And up there in Saskatchewan, 107. That's got to be fairly close to an all-time high in that area. So, yeah, the heat is marching eastward. But back in behind in the northwestern U.S., you can see how much relief there has been. It's been these stations here that were hitting 105 to 107 a couple of days ago. So they're running about 20 to 25 degrees lower than that. Definitely still heat in Boise, though, so that shows you the glacial movement of that cold air. Most of it's actually moving to the northeast rather than the east. So we can kind of use that to kind of track exactly where that cold air is. So it's looking something like that right there. It's good to be on the left side of that line. Justin Pulliam, Ryan Toomey's. Stormy and hot today there in Florida. Brett Dean got some of the Saharan dust. Trent Tubazuski mentions the Weather Service glossary. Yeah, a good resource there. Appreciate that, Trent. Christian Flock, last two storms have moved northeast to southwest. That is mostly dependent on the deep layer flow, like the average of the winds in the lowest several kilometers. So, you know, that's going to vary. There's many waves in the upper levels, and I can pretty much show that to you on the GFS. There you go. So if you happen to be right here, you're going to have northerly flow, and the storms are going to tend to move north to south, or even northeast to southwest in that quadrant of that low. And the upper level low is right there. And I'm pointing out this low because this is likely a very deep system. So if we have like the surface and the upper levels coupling together, where there's a low in the lower levels here and in the upper levels, that means there's a very high possibility that in this area the storms are going to be coming out of the northeast. And out here, southwest to northeast flow, that means the storms are going to be moving a more normal direction there. So in Texas, high pressure right there. This is an upper level high, probably very deep. And that puts North Texas under northerly flow. Now, the storms aren't really moving that way. Oh, I'm sorry, that's an upper level. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's an upper level low. Yeah, okay, now they're moving correctly. They're moving southwest to northeast. But if you're on this side of the low right there, you're going to have northerly flow. Let me see if I can see that on the satellite. Yep, up there in New Mexico right there. You can see the storms are moving that way. And they just happen to be on the other side of that low. And Florida drowning with the flow. Brett Dean. Ryan Toomey's incredible rainfall last 72 hours. And I appreciate it. All right, well, I got to go and start making dinner, so I will leave you with that. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.